Fossil fuels were discovered and utilized, and the natives of Axlis soon began to spread across the surface of the planet to settle in thousands of city-states. On the nearby planets in the cluster, other races were also evolving. These included the Klin, the Oanians, and the Baals, and each of these races achieved a certain level of sophistication in their civilizations along common paths. There came a time when, through wave transmitters and primitive rockets, contact was made between the more advanced species of the cluster. The most technologically advanced of these core races was the Klin. Thoughtful and deliberate, they were exceedingly peaceful and fair-minded. If ever the Klin had warred within their kind, that tendency had been bred out of them thousands of years before. Now they existed simply for the learning, as well as the building of advanced technologies that would allow the other core races in the cluster to finally come together in an alliance of planets. With the exception of the inhabitants of Axlis. As the decades passed, the cluster alliance began to prosper, as trade between the other 6 civilized worlds grew and knowledge was shared. However, most of the major advances in technology and engineering still came from the Klin, who quickly established themselves as the default leaders of the alliance. As the leader, it fell upon the Klin to set most of the rules governing the organization, which would have a serious impact on their future in the years to come. As the alliance grew, and other worlds were discovered, the Klin ran into a dilemma. They found that all these inhabited worlds had civilizations at nearly every range of development, from Stone Age hut builders to sophisticated and complex societies with thousands of cities spread across their surfaces. An indiscriminate policy of inclusion in the alliance would have both shocked these lesser-developed societies, as well as diluted the impact and influence of the more advanced races. As a consequence, the Klin developed a set of criteria that would have to be met by any society seeking membership in the alliance, and prime among these requirements was that the planet must first be civilized enough to exist under one central government before membership would be considered. This arrangement worked well for the other 6 member worlds of the cluster, but not so for the natives of Axlis. At the time, the planet consisted of thousands of independent city-states, each with their own form of government and cultural identity. The greatest of these city-states was Juir, a sprawling metropolis located on a vast alluvial plain between the Southern Ocean and the Cain Mountains. Over 17 million beings called themselves Juireans, and they existed in an almost constant state of near fanatical devotion to their city and to the ruling class of heretical leaders. Near the edge of the eastern mountain range, a vast section of ancient seabed had been uplifted over geologic time to form a low-lying mountain with what appeared to be a sheared-off top. This was the Cain Plain. The almost impossibly flat land atop the mountain was 100 kilometers long and 75 wide, and the natives of Juir used the prominent plateau as a training field for their considerable military forces, as well as for the mass ceremonies their leaders staged to install awe and loyalty in the population. And it was also atop the Cain Plain that the city's most powerful and sophisticated observatories were placed, their telescopes aimed toward the stars and the other inhabited worlds of the cluster. For hundreds of years, the powerful telescopes of the Juirean scientists had observed the bright flickering lights on a few of their neighboring worlds, as the time of year and the season were right. They knew as well that the lights from their own cities would be visible to the others, and when the astronomers began to track tiny mechanical satellites in orbit around their own world, they began to suspect that the moment of first contact was growing near. So it came as no shock or surprise to the Juireans when a module, ablaze with chemical exhaust, began its descent from orbit, and heading for the Cain Plain of Juir. At the time of first contact, Juir was ruled by a fanatical young leader named Maelor Ra Yunus, the 9th Yunus to rule the city. With the Yunus family rising to power through the ranks of the military, Maelor maintained an almost religious devotion to the discipline and structure that came from wearing the uniform of the Juirean security forces. When it was his time to assume the reins of power, Maelor began a transformation of Juirean society into something that mirrored the caste structure of the military.